Another day, another dime. The thing we used to say. I may have mentioned this in past episodes, but back when I worked retail, me and my coworkers would often make the joke about another day, another dollar, you know? Except for us, we weren't paid that much, so another day, another dime. It was fun. It was a fun time, even though I hated it. Enjoyed talking to my coworkers when I had an opportunity to do so. I worked with some interesting people at that time. You know, not all of them got, stuck around for all that long. Some of the initial people I stuck around with were like some of the hardest, I don't know if they're the hardest working people ever, but they were definitely stupid like me and dedicated to working for the company, you know? And I don't know if we had this inkling that at some point we might be able to move up in the company after working for as long as we did, but, you know. I had, most of my coworkers that I really liked, not that I didn't like my other coworkers, but, the ones that were closer to my age is what I should say. They mainly worked on the weekends, so Saturday, Sunday, we were very busy. And I usually would kind of like do what I had to do on those days. Which was usually like drive. I sometimes have nightmares about having to go back to work in that retail place, and or I forgot that I have to work this weekend because I'm trying to make some extra money. I don't know, because I think I've told you guys before, my dreams sometimes have canon, which is hard to believe, but like I've somehow convinced my sleep pattern that I don't have enough money, so I started working weekends at this retail place. And because I'm only working weekends, I sometimes forget to go to work when I'm scheduled because I don't realize I'm scheduled. They keep scheduling me on like Tuesday evenings. So I keep missing work on Tuesday evening. But at the same time, like, they're not firing me for it, which they should. For me, like, hey, I'm just out and out not gonna do a no-call, no-show. Which is like, yeah, don't do that. But I'm like constantly doing it because I'm like, fuck them. I'm not working Monday evening or Thursday evening or whatever they scheduled me for. So, I have to keep convincing myself that, and I occasionally have dreams that I occasionally work at the call center again, but I don't actually work at the call center. I just work as sort of like I've somehow tricked my way into like a situation where I'm working for the company without working in a big facility. Like I'm working at like a branch location, or I'm working in like a company, the company's whatever you call it, business, I don't know, like business offices, I guess. I don't know. That never happened either. So, not sure where that comes from. Yeah. So, I know everyone's dying, and I keep making this joke, everybody's dying to hear where I'm at in the Bible. But I'm up to where the prophets are, Isaiah and Ezekiel, and that, like, and, they have, vastly different ways of looking at stuff. Like Isaiah, I've heard a lot of Isaiah because Isaiah is used a lot in Christianity. Is sort of like a, you know, the forecoming of Jesus Christ sort of thing. Like, you know, there shall come a righteous king from the, you know, the stump of Jesse. You know, the line of David and that sort of jazz. But others aren't so, not nearly as kind. I can't remember exactly where I'm at. Let me take a look here real quick. I'm up to Ezekiel now. And, I'm up to like chapter 13 Ezekiel. So maybe he changes his tune here, but he has, he very much has this feeling like, of like, yeah, fuck all you, you know? Whereas like, you know, in the book of Isaiah, you know, in the Jeremiah, they talk about, you know, the Lord calling them to be a prophet and, you know, telling them what to say to the people, you know, to prepare them for what is... I haven't mentioned this before. There's a large amount of Bible deals with the Babylonian exile, or at least of what I've read so far. It just goes sort of like this. A, you have the beginning. This is the story of the beginning and all the different tribes that live in the Middle East, okay? This is how they came about from a singular place called Adam and Eve. And they became different multi-tribal people from all over the place. Yeah, I didn't realize this guy was here. That's unfortunate. So I think he just ate all my yellow Pikmin. Clearly gonna have to use all my blue Pikmin to fight this guy. Anywho, while I fight this, we'll recap what I've read so far. So you have Genesis, which is sort of the, hey, here's everything that occurred from quote-unquote the beginning of time up through where the Israelites end up in Egypt. This is how they end up in Egypt. This is why they end up in Egypt. Then you cut to Exodus. Exodus is, hey, we're in Egypt. We're being enslaved. You know, we want to leave. You know, I'm going to make this nation of people into my people, even though they're kind of my people already. But I'm going to show them how great of a God I am by taking them out of Egypt and bringing them into the Promised Land. And then, you know, the subsequent rules that are laid down to the Jewish nation, and of course them having to wander in the desert for 40 years because of their disobedience and their constant backsliding into sort of pagan idolatry, despite the laws and the rules that God gives them. Okay, so okay, great. You got your laws. You've got your origin story. You got your laws being brought into the Promised Land. Okay, so then, you know, you guys hit the Promised Land. You get the story of how, let me think here. I believe want to say it's Joshua. Yeah, so then you get into Joshua. Joshua is them taking over what becomes their kingdom. Then you have the intermediate period between once they're in the promised land till they desire to have the king. Then you get to Kings. Kings brings you to the period from the first king Saul to David, David to Solomon, and then unfortunately after that sort of the slowly but surely slide that the Israel people they split into two kingdoms, Judah and Israel, and they sort of slide farther and farther away from God until ultimately they're exiled at the end of Kings. Let me double check that real quick. Yeah, the ends of Kings. You know, you get a brief history of the kings of Israel and Judah, and then they talk about, you know, a brief, like, this is what they did, this is how long they reigned for. But at the end of Kings, it ends with the Babylonian exile, where they're taken into Babylon. And then there are a couple books in between there. There's Ruth, which is the grandmother of King David, great-grandmother of King David, I think. And you also have Esther, which is a self-contained story in of itself. But after that, you get to Psalms, which book of poems written by series of, I believe, kings. The kings, mainly Solomon, David. And then after that, you get into, as you may have noticed from the end of my one playthrough, get into what's it called? Well, yeah, there's Job as well. I forgot about Job. Job is a self-contained story in of itself, but it very much gives you a better understanding of, you know, one person's dedication to or faith towards the Lord and his unwavering commitment to him. But you do eventually end up in Ecclesiastes, which I used the book of Ecclesiastes to help fill time in the end of my Advance Wars 2 playthrough. This was really taken by Ecclesiastes. It's kind of a weird book that talks about part of the human condition and how one can live despite the fact of the reality of the universe, kind of live in that you know, that poor man, you know, can suffer and sweat, but his lot in life is the same as everybody else's, you know. Ultimately, one day he'll die, and that'll be it for him, you know. Just as the you know, the rich man and the poor man live different lives, you know, ultimately they, you know, their goal, all of their hard work and their sweat, you know, amounts to only so much as a reward within their own life, you know. It doesn't amount to anything more than that, you know, because in the end, you know, you pass away and all of your work and possessions and such, you can't take them with you. They stay where you're at. And, you know, your children may benefit or not benefit off of the decisions you made, but ultimately, you know, it just seems like, you know, in many cases things are just useless. You know, life is useless. It's you know, you're here for a short period of time, and it's nothing more than vanity that you exist, you know, and that in itself is a gift that that I guess, you know, it's hard to sometimes hard to realize that life itself is a gift, and that, you know, it's not something that you could necessarily pay back. But anyways, after that you're getting into the prophets, which is Isaiah, Jeremiah. Like I said, I'm up to Ezekiel now. And whereas Jeremiah and Isaiah are kind of, they have their own way of being prophets, you know, and, you know, trying, you know, either, you know, having, in the case of Jeremiah, he has very mixed feelings, because he knows that what he's telling the people is making them angry, because they don't want to hear it, but he's trying to tell them what the Lord tells him, you know, and in doing so, he makes enemies of his people, and they treat him harshly in many cases. And Isaiah tends to go back and forth between, you know, hey, this is the punishment that we do, you know, that the nation deserves for what it did. And like I said, Ezekiel is like this very weird tone shift where instead of, you know, Ezekiel refers to his calling as God saying to him, you know, man, you know, let me see if I can find it again. There's a fair amount of, like, description of otherworldly creatures, angels, what have you, in here that are a bit bizarre, but nothing I haven't heard about previously. Oh, he refers to Ezekiel as mortal man, which is not really how the others refer to themselves. They just sort of talk about how, you know, God talks to them and says, you need to do this. But, you know, very sort of different feeling from that, so interesting nevertheless. My parents have been very busy recently. It's currently, well, this isn't really going to matter much when this premieres, but it's currently summer, and they've been traveling a whole bunch. It's fine, you know, they're retired, they can do as they please. I'm not, you know, jealous per se that they get to travel, and I gotta work, oh darn, you know, because there was a period of time where I was a child and I got to play while they worked, you know. Now it's my turn to work. But they've been doing a lot of traveling recently, which is good for them. You know, glad to hear it. They it seems like they've been taking about what would normally be, I would normally consider a vacation, taking about a week of vacation every month since about May or so. So they would go away for a week in May, and then they would come back for 2-3 weeks, and then they'd go away again, visit someone else or visit something else, you know, some other place. Whether that be, you know, they went away for a couple weeks, well, that was last year, I guess, but I'm gonna say they went away to England last year, they went to Australia in the last year, and then, you know, more recently they've been traveling more domestically. So DC, Philadelphia, They're gonna go up to the Poconos eventually. But in any case, so I'm not exactly sure why I decided to fight this guy the second time. I know he's not giving me anything. He's just gonna give me some, like, whatever you call those. Upgrade, you know, Pikmin-esque disc material. Probably a better way of fighting this guy too, that I'm not aware of. So while these guys are fighting, I probably should have went and gotten my yellow Pikmin. 'Cause I imagine they'll be okay as is. While he's just kind of getting beaten up. Also sort of weirded out by the amoeba item. I'm kind of thinking there was an enemy in Final Fantasy X. I think it was called a Somaphore or something to that extent. There was essentially a gelatinous blob that had like a center that had stuff in it, you know, or whatever. Oh, I see now. Yeah, we'll gather these bitches up, and then we'll go back and get some yellow Pikmin here to carry the bombs. That's fine. We're just gonna pick our own blue Pikmin. The plan is to hopefully not waste another day with the fuckery that I'm doing right now. But to rather collect the part that I'm missing in this area and to move on. What I should do here is I should use the Pigments to collect, or not only bust down the walls, but like give myself a straight shot to the back to my ship. I should have used the yellow Pikmin to knock down this wall here to the left, but I didn't. I'm not thinking straight. I always seem to overestimate the amount of time I have in a day. Positron generator. So yeah, not only will I not get this pearl here, which I fought for, but I will not get the positron generator on this turn. So I have another wasted day. Despite the fact that I started over on this exact level here and canceled out a whole day, I am gonna have to come back here again. Day 9 since impact. Pikmin always carry their prey back to the onion. That results in more Pikmin. More Pikmin means more greatness. Greatness means fasterness. It's the impact site again. We're gonna come back and we're gonna gather up some blue Pikmin. Gonna get that stupid fucking thing that I didn't bother to get. And waste today collecting Packermans. Packermans. Strange world. Here's a question. How do you determine if you're a fan of something? Okay. Now, I understand there's different levels of fandom. Obviously, if you get really nuts, you become a fanatic. But I ask more of a sort of basically like, hey, when exactly, when you take, yeah, boy, I'm gonna get into a completely different subject by when I say this, but at what point, when you have a pile of sand and you're taking 1 grain of sand from it, at what point does the pile not become a pile? And at what point does the grain of sand that you're putting in a separate location start to become a pile? Okay. And I bring that up only because, you know, it's indistinguishable other than comparing the 2 different states. So you could say, hey, this sand that I happen to have in a pile over here remains a pile until I've subtracted a significant amount of it so that it no longer becomes a pile. So only by comparing it to its previous state can it not be a pile, because a small pile is still a pile of sand. Okay, so now that I've said that, let's move on with our lives. And my question is, if you watch an anime, okay, for instance, does that make you a fan of anime? If you watch every anime, that makes you an anime fanatic, I would presume, okay? So, how many animes do you have to watch before you can really consider yourself, hey, I'm a big fan of anime? You know, I enjoy the, you know, I don't know what the right word is, stupid shit. I enjoy the stuff that's fed to me from Japan that comes over and ends up on Netflix or whatever. But I'm not gonna watch One Piece. I'm not gonna watch Naruto. I watched Dragon Ball Z back in the day, but I have no interest in following it anymore. Particularly after the Cell Saga. But I would not watch it through. I would not watch through it again because it's just too long. And I've got a very low tolerance for really dumb bullshit. I mean, like, if you're gonna get, like, for instance, I'll give you a good example, okay? I initially bounced off of a anime called something about a lion. The shogi anime. But it had less to do with shogi was sort of the background, and what they were actually dealing with was, in a lot of cases, and for the most part, was this understanding of feeling isolated and having, you know, no friends or whatever, or no one who really cares for you. And you get that from a number of different angles. The main character, quote unquote, who's a shogi player. You know, his parents die early on, his family doesn't want to take him in, and he gets pitied, quote unquote, by a guy who notices that he has talent as a shogi person. And this kind of drives a wedge between him and his actually natural born children, because he's got a natural aversion to being a good shogi player, or he works really hard to try and impress his foster father. It makes his other step siblings jealous of him. But while that's going on, particularly second season, start to run into, you know, this character that this family of 3 females, an older female that makes the money. There's a younger female who's in kind of like a middle school, high school situation, and then the youngest is like a kindergartner, if you will. And you start to run into the situation where the middle girl, goes to school and stands up for her friend, and she ends up becoming ostracized because the popular girls don't like her anymore because, you know, they're gonna bully her, and it's very strange because the main character, who'd been doing a lot of you know, like, oh, I'm sad, I'm depressed, sort of bullshit. Like, everything that he's learned up to that point helps him to become a better person, but it's like you flip a switch and between what he's learned and having, I guess he has feelings for it, but wanting to take care of this, you know, this middle child girl, he's like, hey, I don't want you to suffer as I've suffered, and it's like really good, really good. It's like really kind of like unexpectedly, he went in a direction that I know I'm seeing more and more people address, but he went in a direction that's completely like counterintuitive to what this anime initially set itself up to be. And there's another one that's kind of not great called starts out with a bunny girl. The only guy can see her. And she dresses up in this bunny costume in the first episode to try and see if anyone can see her. One guy can see her. The whole series, all the episodes revolve around this thing called puberty syndrome. And he runs into a number of different characters. And then at the end you find out that he also has this quote-unquote puberty syndrome where these weird things are happening to these people. And only by kind of working through it were they able to solve this issue. But I don't know, trashy as that one was, I really liked kind of where it went.